And a very good afternoon to you. There's a conference, of course, from different parts of Europe and Africa. My name is Teto Matakwana. Thank you for joining us on this very exciting session where we are going to talk about everything encompassed in the future of work. And this is a very big subject, as you have heard prior from other speakers. It's a big subject that requires a lot of time, a lot of interrogation, and a lot of honesty as we dissect how it is that the global community will be traversing the workspace and the labor market as we understand it as we forge ahead into the future. As you heard before, I'm joined by Georgie Midgley, who is the Chief Executive of GEMA, or M for GEM, a very passionate, of course, entrepreneur with highly placed skills in the new tech and also in platforms that allow people to transact, make money, and also empower themselves through different skills in different spaces. And we are, of course, very fortunate to have them on the panel today. We're also joined by Shannon Micro, who is the co-founder of TAD, spelled TOD, and Kinetic, who, of course, is a South African like myself. And I look forward to engaging on this particular panel. And they, of course, are involved in work which involves service delivery within consumer trade industry. And these are the kind of on-demand skills that one does not necessarily think of at the top of their minds when they're thinking gig economy or gig work. And that involves the deployment of locksmiths, handymen, plumbers, and electricians at the touch of a button, which, of course, transforms the way we interact in this particular field. Welcome, Shannon, and welcome to you, Georgie, to the session. It's great to have you with us.
Thanks, Teta. Great to be here.
Yes,
thanks, Teta. Thanks to your African Forum.
Yeah, just to get started, I mean, our task is really simple, and we just get right to it. What do we mean when we say gig work? And we know that everybody keeps talking about it and talking about work and digital platforms and technologies and how all of this is going to disrupt the way people work. And that is stated as a fact. So Shannon, just to start with you, what exactly is meant when we throw out all these words, and very packed words at that?
Yeah, well, so I think obviously, gig is a slang word for a once-off job. So as we're speaking about now in the digital world, it's about providing opportunity to people to choose when and how they would like to work. Doing gigs, whether it be through the platform we provide at Todd, to handymen, locksmiths, tradespeople all over the country to supplement their income. It's been something that's been happening for decades through the informal sector. Those who are in need of work would do work hand to mouth on a regular basis for a company, but they're not formally employed. So this digitization provides us with a great opportunity to start formalizing what has always been an informal way of working.
Absolutely. And the just speaking of how the understanding is always just around what is formal, what is informal. And of course, we are seeing that this disruption, Georgie, is going to mean that there's a very blurred line around that idea of formality and informality, isn't it?
I agree. I think the thing about the gig economy and gig technologies is that the world's going to become smaller. I mean, you could be a web designer sitting in, Lagos and working for someone in India or in America. The world is going to become a much smaller place, and our workforce is going to become a global workforce as a result of the gig economy. So like you say, the lines between formal and informal are really going to blur.
And is that good for us? Can we start celebrating that somehow it could solve the biggest challenge that we face in the working world? And of course, that is the availability of jobs, Shannon. Is that something that we can look forward to breaking down those barriers from creating the kind of jobs necessary?
I think it's an exceptionally good opportunity for Africa in particular. I think if we look to some statistics a couple of years ago, we have the highest amount of unemployed youth, which is 15 to 24-year-olds in the world, and they also make up the largest portion of the population. So, providing access to gig work and in this platform economy as Georgie pointed out earlier, means that the world is getting smaller, that you are now looking to utilize existing skills, not only within your close proximity, but on a global scale. And equally important, in terms of developing skills and experience, you're not forced to supplement your income with something that is out of your field of work or skill set. We always speak to, when you go interview, I want someone with 2 years experience, I want someone with 5 years experience, but you're also trying to make ends meet. When do you actually get this experience? And I think that's something that's nice to touch on. Now I can say, as Georgie mentioned, that was a good example, just, design work. You can outsource yourself, you can upskill yourself as a designer, as a young designer, while making ends meet, crafting your trade, and provide yourself access to a global market. So great opportunity for Africa.
If
Yeah,
I could
Georgie,
add something there, I just wanted to
yes.
say, I think also the world's got to get their head around the fact that it's no longer jobs. It's earning opportunities. We've got to start seeing the world differently. I mean, if you look at Europe, even in the Americas, people have worked 2-3 jobs. You hear of somebody who works a 9 to 5, they're a waitress in the evening, and they do other work on the weekend. And I think we have always done that in an informal basis. But it will be very interesting when the world actually accepts the fact that it's about earning opportunities, not necessarily formalized jobs. But you can earn a very good income through 5 different sources.
Yeah, and that is not overrated. The idea that you could actually make a sizable living given those opportunities that are at your disposal, as opposed to waking up every day for 25 years plus and doing the same work for this hopeful, ballooning of your salary. It will change, I think, even just the earning dynamic that we see on the continent, given the fact that the meridian average salary is still particularly low when you compare it to the rest of the other continents, especially Europe, Shannon.
Yeah, I think it also provides the opportunity to shift from doing informal work out of necessity, and slowly shifting it towards a choice. Because you supplement your income because you have to, especially in Africa. You need multiple sources of incomes because your average pay is low, and people in Africa are trying to make ends meet. Here, opportunity is presented to perhaps do a little bit more of what you want to, and hopefully, this is where the platform's responsibility comes in, to provide some sort of regulation in terms of what is fair pay for work.
Absolutely. Georgie, and there's also the fact that as we grow the jobs, as the jobs get redefined in terms of how we understand them, as they manifest in the different forms in the gig economy, what is the human impact? Because there's obviously that. What is the impact on me if I'm going to do about 5 jobs? I may do them from the comfort of my home or wherever it is that I choose to do so, as mobility is a great accompanying factor. But what is that impact on the human? Because the future of work is about human centricity.
Yeah, so I think, listen, there's lots of pros and cons about gig work. And I think, the pros, you are your own boss. It allows you to work when you want, how you want. You can essentially manage your own time. So now you could be, you don't have to choose as a woman between being a primary caregiver and doing a job. You can actually do both. And it is fantastic from that perspective. But, there's also the exploitation side. And the mental health side. We've seen it with COVID. The fact that there is a huge, impact on us mentally, a huge impact on us financially. So, gig work does allow us to earn that income, but it also does come with a couple of T's and C's. And the platforms that you work with must be responsible platforms that do take care of their gig workers, because they are open to exploitation.
Georgie, let's talk about that, Shannon, right? Let's talk about that exploitation. Let's talk about what it is that is on the reality of the other side of the coin, because I think we all agree about the enabling environment and the great pros that are there in this particular work. But what is on the other side that we be wary of as we engage in this subject?
I think exploitation is an interesting topic. obviously, as myself and Georgie are both proponents of the gig economy, so we probably speak to it quite favorably, but it is our responsibility. And there are bodies in place, which I'm sure we'll get to later, who help keep us honest, but we also need to be willing participants. In terms of the exploitation, I mentioned earlier that, informal work has always existed. It now has its own classification through digitization. So there hasn't ever been regulation. So if we speak to things that, doesn't exist for a gig worker compared to someone who is traditionally employed, such as leave, sick days, access to medical aid, savings schemes, financial assistance, that really never existed before, but it's been doing that work out of necessity, especially when we speak about this in an African context. And I think, with the digital acceleration given COVID and the rise of Uber across the world, these companies have, we're at a precipice where we can really make a difference and shift what has been informal work and help govern this by making sure that the platforms are providing these opportunities and educating the workers and providing necessary training and access to better care. So, but we do run the risk of falling into the same trap, and we have in certain circumstances as well. But I think in the African context, I feel that the opportunity is still extremely great.
And I think the most critical project that the forum wants is around particular questions, particularly dealing with Africa. Whether questions that shouldn't be jobs would be for informal, how digital might make type of work more productive and better quality of work for better quality for the worker. And just for our audience that may not be privy to the picture in Africa, is that a lot of people have been engaged in informal work for decades, even before the vocabulary to it. Call it, gig work, given the fact that we have sitting at home who's weaving baskets, who's doing people's hair, who is doing laundry on demand and all of that. At the same time, and all of those things are a reality that we must encompass with this new disruption. So, Georgie, you can lead us into this particular scale of the topic to say, if that has always been the case, where people were always, engaged in this work, but did not understand this work, what is it of and the next to that education in terms of what you do, but this is better in places where it's done for a very long time.
Sorry, Teta, you're breaking up a little bit, but I think I got the gist of your question. So, I think the key thing about the gig economy is that it is a gig, as Shannon explained. So there's no outcome, there's no wastage. It's all based on outcomes. So when something is completed, you earn that work. So it's completely up to you how much you earn or don't earn, which I think is really nice to almost empower people. And it's great for, whoever the client is, because they only pay on successful completion. But when you look at, for me, the key thing about gig work itself is the opportunities and the quality at which it offers people. The fact that it's on a standard terms and conditions, everyone is offered equal pay for equal work. So all of a sudden, it deals with a whole bunch of socioeconomic issues that we've had to face in Africa, and that are a reality. Things like the pay gap between males and females. There are just so many problems that we are experiencing, and like Shannon said, I'm a huge proponent of the gig economy. I think it is a catalyst to solving a number of problems in Africa, and I think if we can scale it and bring on as many platforms as possible, we could really address a lot of financial and social issues.
And just sort of, domestic services, handyman. I mean, like, for example, in South Africa, in households, domestic services became a big shift, in recent years. And with the COVID-19 pandemic, we saw a lot of people moving from the traditional employment or a domestic worker, staying in their home to hiring, a laborer who comes in ever so often, given the needs changed. A lot of people working from home. And some people say, but what happens to that domestic worker to actually enjoy the benefits of permanent employment and stable employment? Does this or is it something they have an opportunity to turn to their benefit if they so will?
Sorry, Tess, you're breaking up a little again, but I do think I got the gist here. It's a good point, and I think again in the African context, first is the opportunity to supplement your income or earn an income. What these gig platforms do, and what we do, is provide the opportunity for those who do not have the skill set or ability to market their services on a large scale, whether it be hyper-localized nationally or globally. And for that, in turn, there is work provided. But when that scale ramps up to someone that becomes someone's dominant income, that's when it begs the question: okay, where does the responsibility lie? You're a gig worker doing these little micro gigs, but if it's consistently for the same company, and I think this is where Uber has been taken to task worldwide on many occasions, where is that line drawn? When should the now deemed employer in certain instances take responsibility to provide certain benefits that are afforded to full-time employees, and what entities exist in the world to help regulate these things? But I think for me, it's not a. It's nice that we're starting to, companies like that are providing enough regular work to people that it's starting to become the majority of their income. But then what needs to be questioned is when, it's the volatility of gig work is probably one of its most negative aspects. It's your choice when you want to work, but at the same time, if you don't work, you're not earning. And that's not just because you're sick. You may need medical leave. You might just need a mental break, but you can't afford to take that break. And that's where we want to question where is that line, and where should we be assisting that regulation?
And George, is it limited to a particular age group, the current trends and current trends into the gig market? Is there a particular age group, a particular fine interest here, or is it something that is overarching at point?
So I think, it's available to everyone. I think that's what makes it quite special, is the fact that it's the same opportunity is afforded to all. That being said, obviously the youth are synonymous with smartphones. They are much better on technology. So you do find that the majority of your gig workers are in your youth. And funny enough, if you look at Empajam specifically, we've got majority of female. 65%. So you're looking at, from my particular perspective, the majority are female youth that are enjoying the gig work that we offer. And from looking at a number of other platforms, that does seem to be a trend, but not in all cases. I know, let's say, from Todd's perspective, it might not be. But again, it all does depend.
And I think this brings us to this chapter that we have to go into. And that's the challenges that accompany this particular line of work. You spoke about exploitation earlier on, Shannon, the possibility for one to abandon the need to take care of their mental well-being and all of those things. And these are all, of course, challenges. And I wonder what then are the structural challenges that one would face when wanting to venture into this kind of work in the different African countries that you've worked with, Shannon?
Yeah, I think in terms of challenges, there's a basic, the basic challenge is obviously access to data in a digital world. You need a smartphone to use most of the apps that are out there. But compared to the other challenges you would face pre-digitization of the gig economy, I think the benefits and the access is far improved to what it was. As I mentioned earlier, it is up to the response. It's responsible. The responsibility is up to that particular platform. Speaking to what we do at Todd, we find that there is, in the industry we work in, where we connect tradespeople to people, there was little regulation in hourly labor costs. For example, we found that some people may charge a couple $100 an hour, some may charge 900 Rand an hour. What is a fair hour's work for fair hours pay? And that is something that we said, okay, well, we need to take responsibility here. We're going to help guide this process, and with that, we can help take the side and understand the tradespeople who are on our platform and make sure that they are quoting correctly. So we offer a lot of advice, and we are very considerate in our approach. And I think, the pandemic, especially in that hard lockdown, I think everyone had a little bit of time to reflect. And the question I asked myself is, who is truly my customer? And in the beginning, I would have said, well, it's the person who's ordering a trades person. And then, my thinking changed. Actually, the people who are going to be using the app more often, my super users, are the tradespeople. And then you start questioning, what are the workers' problems? What do they face on every day? What problems are we trying to solve, and how can we better enable them? And I think if you consider your platform in that way, not only are you going to, help empower someone to do their job better, but it's also going to benefit you as a person and your company, because they ultimately, the experience they provide is the experience your client or your end user is receiving.
I am a startup in Portugal right now, and I'm looking at the African market, and I'm hearing everything that you and Shannon are saying, and I'm thinking, wow, exciting times, opportunity for growth and expansion and investment there. And I want to come down here. What are some of the realities, for example, from where you operate, that must be considered around this legislation, regulatory framework? How do I function as a company of this particular unique, set in this particular environment that is mostly formalized?
So, there are no regulatory frameworks. Well, there are not many in place at the moment. And if you look through Africa, unfortunately, nothing, even in Europe, there's not much that has been formalized. But like we mentioned earlier, it's almost up to platforms to monitor themselves. So you get the likes of your Fair Work, which allows companies to align with them to get that accreditation to ensure that it is, like Shannon says, a fair hour's work gets a fair hour's pay, and how to make that consistent. But when you're looking at taxation and the social protection and all of those different things, I keep bringing up COVID, but the impact that COVID has had on people, we could see what happened to gig workers during that COVID lockdown, and very few managed to offer them some support during that time. But between taxation, around the social protection workers, and also the cost of data, because for me, the cost of data also needs to be addressed by regulation, because that is, for me, the largest barrier. There are, billions of smartphones and coming into Africa every year. Mobile phone penetration or smartphone penetration is nearly 50%. Access to internet is there. It's just the cost now. The biggest barrier is the cost. So hopefully those regulatory frameworks do come up, because, this gig economy it's got to scale, and when it scales, it can have the impact it can.
Yeah, absolutely. Shannon, I know this is a particular passion of yours, talking about the fact that the industry does not need policing. It does not need any external framework to come and bulldoze its direction, because it's already doing that, and it's only in its benefit to self-govern in a way that is ethical and in a way that can, of course, grow the sustainability of the industry as a whole. Please just, give us that commentary around your thoughts regarding whether we do need this regulatory framework, which we fear are an inevitability anyway.
I think everything needs regulation, and it needs people who are going to question, especially when gig economy is making up such a huge portion of the African economy at the moment. And with this comes exploitation. And again, to mention COVID, there are a lot of companies who may have shifted the way that they work and how they employ people. They may have retrenched people and then hired people back as contractors. And there's these blurred lines. And I think it is, Georgie mentioned Fair Works earlier. That's an entity that helps. It certainly helped me think about how we treat our workers in Todd in ways that we haven't before. We thought we were providing this opportunity. It's access to extra work to supplement your income. But then, they provide this clarity of, well, are you as visible as you think? Are they aware of, points 1, 2, and 3 that enables them to do work? And what's important to understand is, and I use Uber again as a reference, because Uber drivers, some may do it to supplement income, but a vast majority, especially in in Africa, when they drive for e-hailing services, they'll be logged onto multiple platforms. So without them, they don't have an income at all. So Uber is, they would look to Uber or Lyft as the proverbial boss, but they don't have access to anyone else. They're not seeing any other employees. They're on their own. They need to take care of their own taxes. They don't have leave, as I mentioned before. So I do think that regulation needs to be carefully considered before things get out of hand. And perhaps it's a collaboration between platforms and a regulatory body, which helps individuals, enable their own futures with the ability to take leave through savings schemes. And maybe at a certain level, there's co-payments that need to happen. I don't think that this necessarily applies to every platform at every stage of its life cycle. But when you get to a certain point, these difficult questions need to be posed. And, I think it's good that platform companies are pushed and that competition is increased, and we provide these opportunities that are deserving of the people who enable us to do what it is we do.
Absolutely true. And I think just an interesting example for the audience is the South African example, and you mentioned Uber and the kind of struggles that Uber has had in the country, where you find there's been mass protests by its employees or its subscribers of its service, and quite violent protests at that, and the main issue being just the kind of conditions which they're subjected to. Many mentioning that at the end of course, a month, they do not see the kind of bottom line that is sort of dangled in their faces when they sign up to the service, as they do not realize the amount of costs and hidden costs that may be there in this particular system. And this, of course, is something that we must all be quite cautious about, because it's got the potential to scupper the whole, disruption that is quite necessary. Because if government could not find a way to resolve it, saying, but this company is not even registered here, we do not have a way of communicating with it. Is that something, Georgie, that you think should be an effort of lawmakers as this industry scales up, to say, but how do we meet you halfway? I know that there's the formation of some sort of a commission in the presidency in South Africa that looks at the fourth industrial revolution and the future of work, but are these the conversations that should be had in terms of setting up that policy that will not only protect the worker, but also protect the necessary state where the company, if it is not local, may be operating from?
100%. Like I said earlier, I mean, the world is getting smaller. So a lot of these companies that are going to come in aren't going to be South African based. They are going to be international, which brings its own complexities. But that being said, you've got to kind of build the regulation in a way that it assists each company in its different stage and where it's housed. Because, you don't want to overregulate this environment that can be so agile, and its agility is what makes it so magic. And you don't want to overregulate that, but at the same time, you've got to deal with the issues. As Shannon said, it's not for all companies, but at that certain stage, it definitely has to be dealt with. So, I mean, I've done quite a bit of work with the Fourth Industrial Revolution committee that the president had set up. And, it is about talking to those platforms that currently exist and getting our opinions and building this with them, because we are the ones that are doing it on the ground. We have got the experience and the knowledge. So, dealing with the likes of Sweep South, Uber South Africa, Todd, Infojam, that's who needs to be part of those discussions, as well as our gig workers, because, they are the ones who we here are trying to protect, as well as try and create an environment that is, conducive to good, healthy, clean work.
Yeah, and of course, in Africa, we have the glory child, the cream of the crop, and that is Kenya. And when one speaks of the gig economy and the gig work, they have been leading the charge for years, for decades. And I think that is for us an example of what can happen. Because if one sits down with the Kenyan stats and looks at how the poverty numbers reduced dramatically at that over a certain period of time when there was this boom in the gig economy, then one realizes actually this is the unlocking key that we've all needed. And just, I mean, you could just send an explore more on what Kenya got it right from the very beginning.
I mean, I've traveled to Kenya a couple of times for business, and lovely people, very entrepreneurial at heart. I find a lot of small businesses, people really hustling to do as much as they can to earn as much as they can. And I've always loved the culture, and I think that forms part of it. Another aspect is that mobile penetration in Kenya, and just certain, financial institutions and banking is also just way ahead of South Africa. We're only now getting there. I think, Georgie mentioned something earlier in terms of data. I think I mentioned before as well. It's so funny to me how you can buy a smartphone now for around 400 Rand, but you can quickly run up a 400 Rand bill in data within a couple of hours if you're logging onto the wrong platform. And that disparity to me is one of our biggest hindrances in this country. Whereas that's something where that has been pushed in Kenya for a long time. So I think, Kenya's a few years ahead of us. People have always traditionally been, if they say it's funny because I listened to a podcast not so long ago specifically about informal work in Kenya. If someone was studying how to be a graphic designer, for example, but the need to create and be self-sufficient would be such that same person was selling sandals on the side of the road, helping make food for someone else at another time. But now, quickly, what has been realized is on your phone or online, you can now reach your audience without having to move between destinations, and you can also monetize your services in a way that speaks to your field of work and how you want to grow. And I think the other realization there is it's perhaps a way of changing the status quo. And I think and that speaks to, if we take it back to Africa and everyone in general, it's more of the same. If you do more informal work, how are you elevating your status? How are you getting out of living hand to mouth? But if you can find the right gig that speaks to what it is you want to do, and you can improve and better yourself and do more, foster and become better at what you want to do, you can eventually then actually just change yourself and improve yourself through what these digital platforms offer.
Absolutely. And Shannon, just before we go to questions on the floor, Georgie, rather, just to carry on that point that Shannon makes there around Kenya and around how if the same sort of environment was to be teleported to the south, it would not particularly succeed because we still have quite menial challenges such as access to affordable data. But what kind of offline gig work services can be explored in the meantime in the sub-Saharan South while there's that movement continuing around the affordability of data services?
Yeah. So listen, I mean, if you look how low the unemployment rates as a result in Kenya are, it really has been an amazing success story. And I think the large reason why it's been so successful in Kenya is also not only has private sector embraced it, but so has the government. I mean, the Kenyan government really has embraced gig work. So if that had to, let's say, travel south, I do think it would definitely have legs here, but they are very technically, they are, the pioneers when it comes to, financial inclusion. I don't know anyone in Kenya who doesn't have an M-Pesa and EcoCash account. They don't even know what, formalized banking is about. It's all digital. And so they think like that. It's just natural to them. And I think when you look at the rest of sub-Saharan Africa, we do have a bit of catching up to do. But that doesn't mean we're not going to get there. And I do think that we may be a little bit behind, but the opportunities are coming. And as we embrace them, I think they will grow. But we might not maybe embrace the digital currencies as much as the Kenyans. But I think when it comes to gig work, there's a lot, from whether it's e-hailing, cleaning, and it's there's a whole bunch of C2C gig platforms available, like your sweep sites, as well as, let's say, like Empajam, which is B2B ones. So, I think it'll get there.
Yeah, it absolutely will. And of course, this, ladies and gentlemen, brings us to an opportunity to interact with you from the different spaces where you are taking part in this Euro-Africa Forum 2021. And you do hope that you've got those questions ready for our very esteemed panel, if you want to understand how it is that the big challenge of unemployment can be resolved in Africa through this disruption in the way we work. That would obviously be one of the biggest things that we hope to achieve with this, because for every shift in society, there has to be some long-lasting solutions, which obviously touch on the way that the human life experience goes and the quality of life goes. So I will be leaving and opening the floor now to those questions. And of course, we are all ready to So I think we may not be connected to the questions floor yet, but we will continue with this conversation between Georgie, Shannon, and myself, and to just explore further and talk about the urban and rural divide, which is a big question in Africa, and how that is then bridged. Whose responsibility, Shannon, is it to bridge that divide in society in terms of exposure to the opportunities that the gig economy offers?
Yeah, I mean, good questions. The platform should take responsibility and consider how they reach potential gig workers. We've spoken about regulatory bodies. Georgie mentioned in Kenya, part of that success is the government and how they have backed the embracing of the gig economy. So I think that should apply here and all over Africa. I don't know if Georgie, if you have any further thoughts on that.
Yeah, no, I agree. I was actually very glad when you asked that question to Shannon and not myself. So
I threw it to you.
It's okay, it's a little bit of a hospital pass, but it's all right. No, I mean, what I just love about the gig economy and for me is the fact that you can't actually connect with people digitally unless you train them. So you have to firstly upskill them, and then you link them to an earning opportunity. And it is about connecting those two things. And, if we can just, it's not only about getting government to embrace it, but it's about getting private sector, nonprofits, and embracing what the gig economy can bring just helps instead of just like empowering one person, it empowers on a scalable exponential basis. And for me, once you've trained that person, you're giving them the confidence. You're helping them bridge that gap between unemployment and employment, which is what Africa needs. Then you give them the earning opportunity to match it. It helps give them dignity, because people don't want handouts. They want that dignity that I earned this, I deserve this. And that is so important. And together with that confidence and that dignity, it gives hope. And with hope, that will help unlock a lot of the potential of Africa. And Africa is the sleeping giant. We really, really are. We have got a huge youth population. And if we can unlock that, we could become the most powerful workforce in the world.
Absolutely. And, Georgie, I think you're there.
Sorry?
No,
it was Shannon. You had something to say.
Yeah, I was just going to add to that. Sorry. You make a good point. Then it made me think about training and how we put our workers through a little bit of training. And we almost, when you're building something and you're in it, you look at it, you're like, oh, this is so intuitive. It's so easy to use. And you're looking at it from your perspective. So you need to put yourself in the shoes of the people who you want to engage with your platform. So, as platform workers, the responsibility comes in, okay, do people understand how they should engage? Do they understand what the potential is, and what aspects of your app provides to enable them? And so, we've started hosting a lot of training seminars. We're busy building out, a wizard on how to use our app first. And it's things that we didn't consider before. So I think identifying and speaking to workers who use your app is a good first step to understand their needs and not to assume. You can often assume the incorrect thing, and what they really want is something completely different. And we've had, a few of those moments where it clicked when speaking to people. And it was often very easy things. And at the end of the day, we're also providing a customer experience, and we need to understand our customer before we can create that journey. So I think that's very important as well.
Yeah, because I think giving the earning opportunities is one thing, but if you don't support them in the training in order to get there, it really is meaningless. And like you say, we looked at a number of different platforms before we built Infojam, and the fact is you need an African solution built by Africans for Africans, because I have got guys who work on a smartphone that has duct taped their battery in, and they have to hold their phone up in the air. Asks me, go and talk to somebody in America, and they will get an iPhone or a Samsung. So it is a very different user experience and user group that we deal with in Africa versus the rest of the world. So it has to be a solution that works for your gig workers. Yes, you are trying to deliver a service, but it's got to be intuitive and work for them. And you've got to be able to support them.
That's exactly the element mentioned before. And the reflection of business with understanding of its requirements coming in, because you can be launching a business, which I think about it is the benefit, and it's big gap in the market. Yet when it is the actual where you find that the import for people who actually are going to use that. How do we then make sure that you get that bridge? You spoke about research that needs to happen, and I wonder if that does not do the research even prior to being in business, to say this is what we need to be getting to even start.
Sure, Teto. I heard maybe every third word you said there.
Apologies, my is already quite great. I was my service provider quite an angry to this. I was just saying that research as necessary right at the beginning to what do I need to offer the kind of support, for example, that George made. What will be needed to do it? First, research in it.
Tess, you're breaking up badly. I heard the word support. I'm going to latch onto that, and hopefully I get in the ballpark of what you're looking for. But I think that's quite important. How do you reach a company that by design doesn't want to be reached? They want to be that layer of tech that connects A to B, and that's what all of the gig economy companies strive for. They want to be, we want to be these unicorn companies that can connect people, and speaking to them on an individual basis is very difficult. But at some point, especially at the beginning, you need to listen, you need to be there for support. So how do the gig workers contact you? Is there an easy means of contact that is in-app on your website? Are you hiding behind an email address, which you can never get back to? Who is held accountable for responding to gig workers and making sure that they feel included? There are also simple ways of doing things. If you want to reach a few people at a time and make them feel included, you can host regular webinars to explain your platform, explain why you're doing certain things a certain way. And I think it's very easy to tell someone you're doing that, but it just takes a little bit more effort to explain why. And then that helps people feel a little bit more included and supported and heard. And I think we've trying to adapt a culture where we listen to those who work for Todd and who are gig workers for Todd, because if something's bothering them, it should be bothering us, and they need the channels to reach us, so we can hear them. So it's about making yourself available, listening, understanding, and responding to making feel people included in your process.
Absolutely.
I don't know if that was what you asked at all.
No, it's absolutely in the region of what I asked, and you actually took the conversation a bit further than my question. And of course, I must say, ladies and gentlemen, which we should be on to be able to respond to, which is quite celebrating. I imagine you had been looking for interaction with the panel on the economy around the disruption of the way we understand it. Are all quite critical. We know that the international organization, for example, last 2 years ago, published that report on work, speaking how the next should be numeric, that wave on all of that, but this first. And I think that has the pillar and the backbone of the conversation that we are having. This particular, it's not for the sake of it, not for showing how greatly technologically advanced our generation is, but to transform lives and ensuring that we actually improve on the quality of life, that not all spending our endless days on earth contributing to one particular section of society, whereas we have gifts beyond just that one particular line of thinking. Your parting shots, Georgie, on what it is that needs to happen going forward and some of the things that our attendees should be wary of going forward.
No, I mean, I think, I would just really hope that as a result of COVID, we personally saw the gig economy explode within our particular business. It grew by 30% in the States as a result of COVID-19 and the lockdowns. So, as all it has done is allow people to see that they can work from home, firstly, and secondly, that there are digital, smart ways of doing traditional things. And let's embrace the gig economy, and let's try and get as many gig companies and platforms to come to the fore. I would love to see this space explode. I'd love to see one day when you look at the employment stats, formal employment is still big within, let's say, South Africa, informal employment small, and gig work is massive. And I really hope that it has helped unlock that within Africa.
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you, Georgie, for that parting shot. Of course, this brings us to the end of this session. Very, very interesting, invigorating conversation with Georgie Miji, who is the Chief Executive of GEMA, which is M for Jam, which is, of course, a South African-based tech company, which is also quite involved, closely linked to the work being done by Todd, which is, of course, my group. Thank you so much for joining us, and we hope that the conversation will expand as the forum continues and other conversations